The letter had one sentence written across the front. If you are reading this, then I didn't make it home. My father found it hidden inside my desk. He wasn't supposed to. For 30 years, he believed I was the daughter who chose a uniform over her family. The daughter who missed birthdays. The daughter who disappeared for months and returned with no explanations. The daughter he thought had forgotten where she came from. But that night, he opened a letter that was never meant for him. And inside were 6 names, 6 soldiers, 6 promises, and one truth that would force my father to question everything he believed about the daughter he thought he knew. Because the secret I carried wasn't about my rank. It wasn't about medals. It wasn't even about me. It was about a mission the government buried and the people who never came home from it. But before my father discovered the truth, he had to face the hardest question of his life. What if the daughter he spent years blaming was the one person who had been protecting him all along? My father and I had become experts at avoiding each other, not fighting, not arguing, avoiding. There is a difference. Fighting means 2 people still care enough to be heard. Avoiding means both people have already decided the other person won't understand. Every Sunday morning, I called him. Every Sunday morning, the conversation lasted exactly 7 minutes. How are you? Fine. Work busy? Always. You eating properly? Yes. A pause. Then the same question. When are you coming home? And every time I gave the same answer. Soon. The problem was, soon had become a word neither of us believed anymore. My father, Thomas Bennett, was the kind of man people admired from a distance. A retired firefighter, a community volunteer, the man neighbors called when they needed help. He spent 32 years running into burning buildings when everyone else ran away. People saw courage when they looked at him, but they didn't see what happened after the fire went out. They didn't see the stubbornness, the silence, the way he carried pain by pretending it didn't exist, especially when it came to me, his daughter, the one person he never learned how to understand. When I joined the military at 19, he didn't yell. That would have been easier. Instead, he became quiet. The night I told him I had signed my enlistment papers, he sat at the kitchen table for almost 10 minutes without speaking. Finally, he looked at me and asked, why? Not angry, not disappointed, just confused. I want to serve. He looked away. You could do anything. I know. You could go to college. I can do both. You could have a normal life. I remember those words, a normal life, because at that moment, I realized he didn't see my dream as courage. He saw it as a mistake. I don't want normal. He sighed. One day, you'll understand. I smiled sadly. No, Dad, one day, you'll understand. Years passed. I became someone he couldn't explain. My career moved forward. His questions increased, but my answers stayed the same. How long will you be gone? I don't know. What exactly do you do? I can't discuss everything. Are you safe? Yes. That last answer was the one I hated giving, because sometimes it wasn't completely true, but the truth wasn't mine to share, not even with him. After my mother passed away, things between us became worse. She had been the bridge between us, the person who could translate my silence into something my father understood. Without her, there was only distance. At her funeral, Dad stood beside me and held my hand. For one moment, I thought maybe losing her would change us. Maybe grief would remind him that life was short. Maybe he would finally ask about my world. Instead, 3 months later, we returned to the same pattern. Short phone calls, careful conversations, unanswered questions. Then came the day everything changed. It started with a phone call at 2:13 in the morning. My phone rang. I saw the number. Unknown. Most people would ignore a call at that hour. I didn't. Years in the military teach you something. Late-night calls are rarely meaningless. Hello? A voice answered. Is this Captain Bennett? I sat up. Yes. This is Colonel Hayes. The room suddenly felt colder. Sir, I need to speak with you. About what? A pause. The kind of pause that tells you the answer before you hear it. About Operation Lantern. I stopped breathing for a second. That name belonged to a different life. A life I had buried. A life I promised never to discuss. Sir, where are you? Home. Good. Because tomorrow morning you need to come in. Why? His voice became quieter. Because the files are being reopened. My hand tightened around the phone. That's impossible. I know. Who authorized it? We don't know yet. I looked toward the dark window. Rain covered the glass. Colonel? Yes? Why are you calling me? The answer came immediately. Because your name is in those files. The line went silent. For years, I had protected the secret, protected the families, protected the promise, but I never imagined the past would come looking for me. The next morning, I drove to a secure facility outside the city. Colonel Hayes was waiting. He looked older than the last time I saw him, more tired, but his handshake was still firm. You haven't changed. I smiled slightly. Neither of you. He didn't smile back. That told me everything. Something was wrong. He placed a folder on the table. We have a problem. I opened it. Inside was a photograph. 6 soldiers standing together. I recognized every face because I was there. The others were people I promised never to forget. What happened? Colonel Hayes looked at me. Someone is asking questions. Who? He hesitated, then said the one name I never expected. Your father. I stared at him. My father? He filed requests for information. Why? Hayes leaned back. Because he thinks the military took something from him. I looked down at the photograph. The truth was, he was right. The military did take something from him. It took years. It took explanations. It took the daughter he thought he knew. But he didn't know the full story. Not yet. Hayes pushed the folder toward me. When these records become public, your father will finally know why you disappeared. I closed my eyes because I already knew what was coming. The world would learn what happened on Operation Lantern. My father would learn what happened to me. And after 30 years of silence, I'm not sure which truth would hurt him more. The truth about the mission or the truth about his daughter. For 3 days after meeting Colonel Hayes, I avoided my father. Not because I was afraid of him, because I was afraid of what would happen when he finally asked the right question. My entire adult life had been built around one rule: protect the mission, protect the people, carry the burden. That rule had guided every decision I made, every goodbye, every unanswered phone call, every time my father looked at me like a stranger. But now, the one person I had protected from the truth was searching for it, and I didn't know whether I wanted to stop him. On the 4th day, my phone rang. Dad. I stared at the screen for several seconds. Normally, I answered immediately. That day, I almost didn't. Finally, I picked up. Hello? There was silence. Not the normal silence. Something different. Are you okay? His question caught me off guard. I'm fine. No. His voice was quiet. You always say that when you're not. I sat down. For years, my father had never noticed things like that. Not once. What happened? Another pause. Then he said, I found something. My heart sank. What? I found an old storage box in your mother's closet. I stopped breathing. My mother? Of course. She had kept everything. Every photograph, every letter, every memory I thought I had hidden. What was inside? I don't know. You don't know? Because I didn't open everything. That surprised me. The old version of my father would have opened anything he found. He believed answers belonged to whoever discovered the question. But something about his voice was different. I found your name. My fingers tightened around the phone. What name? Sarah Bennett. A cold feeling moved through me. Where? On a document. What kind of document? He hesitated. A military document. The room went silent. My father had spent years saying he didn't understand my world. Now he was standing at the edge of it, and he had no idea what waited on the other side. Dad. What? Where is the document? At home. Don't show anyone. The words came out faster than I intended. He noticed. What aren't you telling me? I closed my eyes. There it was, the question I knew would eventually come. I can't explain everything. You always say that. His voice changed. Not angry, hurt. You've been saying that for 30 years. I didn't answer. Sarah, I lost your mother without knowing what she was going through. I lost years with you because you were always somewhere I couldn't reach. And now I find a document with your name on it, and you want me to pretend nothing happened? I swallowed, because for the first time, I understood his anger. Not because he was right, but because he was hurting. I never wanted to shut you out. Then why did you? I looked at the photograph on my desk. 6 soldiers, 6 promises, 1 secret. Because sometimes protecting someone means letting them be angry with you. He didn't respond. What does that mean? I stopped myself. Too much, too soon. I'll come by tomorrow. My childhood home looked exactly the same. Same white fence, same oak tree in the front yard, same porch where my mother used to sit every evening. But somehow, it felt smaller, like the house had been waiting all these years for a conversation nobody wanted to have. Dad opened the door before I knocked. That surprised me. Usually he made me wait. A strange little reminder that he was still the father and I was still the child. Not today. Today he looked uncertain. Come in. I walked inside. On the dining table sat a folder. My name was written across the front. I stopped. For a moment, I wasn't a colonel. I wasn't a soldier. I was 19 years old again, standing in this house, trying to explain why I wanted to leave. Dad noticed my expression. Do you know what this is? Yes. That answer hurt him. You knew? I knew something like this existed. What does that mean? I looked at the folder. It means Mom kept something safe. He looked confused. From me? I didn't answer. That was answer enough. He stepped back. Your mother knew about this? Yes. And she never told me? She respected my promise. He stared at me. Your mother knew more about your life than I did. It wasn't an accusation. It was pain. I quietly said, yes. He opened the folder. Inside were several pages, photographs, a handwritten letter, and an official document with sections blacked out. His eyes moved across the pages. Slowly. Confusion became disbelief. Disbelief became something else. What is this? I didn't answer. Sarah. His voice became sharper. What is this? I sat down, because there were some truths you couldn't deliver standing up. It's from a mission I was assigned to 12 years ago. 12 years? I nodded. Operation Lantern. The name meant nothing to him, but the fear on my face told him it meant everything. What happened? I looked down. 7 soldiers were trapped behind enemy lines. His expression changed. You? Yes. And? I took a breath. And we were told no one was coming. The room became silent. Dad, I made a decision. What decision? I looked at him. The kind of decision that changes who you become. He waited, but I didn't continue. Not yet, because he wasn't ready. Neither was I. That night, after I left, my father called Colonel Hayes. I knew because Hayes called me afterward. He knows. I closed my eyes. How much? Enough to ask questions. What did you tell him? The truth? My heart dropped. What truth? Hayes was quiet. Then he said, the truth about the soldiers. I waited. And? Not yet. What does that mean? It means he doesn't know about you. I looked outside my window. Good. But Hayes didn't sound relieved. Sarah. What? There is something you need to know. What? A long pause. Then he said, the files are not being reopened because of your mission. I froze. Then why? A long pause. Then he said, because someone inside the government wants to know why you were never recognized for what happened that night. I froze. What? You saved 6 lives. I said nothing. You were recommended for the highest honor. My throat tightened. But you refused. Because it wasn't about me. Exactly. Hayes sighed. And now someone is asking why the woman who saved those soldiers disappeared from the record. I looked at the old photograph. The 6 faces stared back at me. The world thought I was a quiet officer who avoided attention. My father thought I was a daughter who chose duty over family. But soon, everyone would learn the truth. And when they did, my father would have to answer one painful question. Was he angry because I left, or because he finally realized what I had been carrying alone? For the first time in 30 years, my father stopped asking why I left. He started asking what happened while I was gone, and that difference changed everything. Because anger is easy. Anger lets you believe you are the victim. But understanding forces you to look at the person you blamed and wonder what they survived without you. The next morning, my father called me before sunrise. I almost didn't recognize the number. He never called that early, not unless something was wrong. Sarah. His voice sounded different. What's wrong? I read the letter. I froze. What letter? The one from your mother. My heart dropped. My mother's letter, the one I had hoped would never be needed. What did it say? He was quiet. Then, she knew. Those 2 words carried more weight than anything else. She knew what? She knew what happened to you. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. My mother had always understood more than she said. She knew because I told her. And she never told me? No. Why? Because she knew you would blame yourself. I didn't say it, but I knew it was true. I drove to my father's house again. This time, there was no awkward greeting, no pretending, no small talk. The folder was still on the table, but beside it was another envelope. Old, yellowed. My mother's handwriting was on the front. For Thomas. My father stared at it. I couldn't open it. That surprised me. Why? Because I'm scared. The honesty almost broke me. My father had always been the strongest man I knew, the man who entered burning buildings, the man who comforted families after disasters. But now, a small envelope had him afraid. "What are you afraid of?" He looked at me. "That I'll find out I was wrong about you." I didn't answer, because that was exactly what was happening. He opened the letter, slowly, carefully, like he was opening something fragile. His eyes moved across the page. The room remained silent. Then his expression changed. His hands began shaking. "What?" He looked at me. "Your mother wrote this before she died." I nodded. She knew she didn't have much time. He swallowed. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because she asked me not to." "She asked you?" "She knew you." That hurt him, more than anger would have. He looked back at the letter. Then he started reading aloud. "Thomas, if you are reading this, then Sarah finally allowed you to know what she has carried." My father's eyes lifted immediately. "Allowed?" I looked down. "Keep reading." He continued. "You have spent years believing Sarah left us because she loved her duty more than her family." His breathing changed. "But the truth is the opposite." Silence. "She stayed away because she loved us enough to protect us from what she had seen." My father stopped. He looked at me. "What does that mean?" I didn't respond. Not yet. He continued. "Our daughter has always been stronger than anyone realizes, but strength has a cost. She came home from that mission carrying things no person should have to carry." My father's face changed. For the first time, he wasn't seeing my uniform. He was seeing the person inside it. The next line was the one that broke him. "Thomas, please don't ask her why she couldn't tell you. Ask yourself why she thought she had to carry it alone." My father lowered the letter. His eyes were wet. "I did that." His voice was barely audible. "I made her feel like she couldn't come home." I didn't answer, because there was nothing I could say. The truth was too complicated for one apology. That afternoon, Colonel Hayes called. "We need you in Washington." "Why?" "The files are being released tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" "Yes." "What happens after?" "Everything changes." I looked toward my father. He was still holding my mother's letter. "What about my family?" Hayes paused. "Sarah, the families of the soldiers involved deserve to know." I understood. Those families had spent 12 years believing their loved ones were simply gone. Now they would finally know what happened. But there was something else, something nobody knew, something I had kept hidden even from my father. "What about my name?" Hayes was silent. Then, "Your name is already attached." I felt my chest tighten. "What do you mean?" "The investigation found the original recommendation, the one you refused." I closed my eyes. "No." "Yes." "I don't want recognition." "Sarah, this isn't about recognition anymore." "Then what is it about?" His answer was quiet. "Truth." The next morning, I arrived at the Pentagon. The building looked exactly the same, but somehow I felt like I was walking into a place I'd left years ago. Officers who recognized me stopped. Some saluted, some shook my hand, others simply nodded with respect. But this time, I didn't feel pride. I felt nervous, because I knew what was coming. In a conference room, several senior officials waited. Colonel Hayes stood beside a large screen. On it was the old mission file, Operation Lantern. The classified stamp had been removed. "Today," Hayes said, "the country learns what happened." The first image appeared. My team, 6 soldiers, 1 mission, 1 impossible situation. Then the next image appeared. A report, my name, a recommendation. I stared at the screen. "No." Hayes looked at me.
You saved them. I made a decision. You made the right decision. I just did what anyone would do. Nobody in the room spoke because they knew the truth. Not everyone would have. After the briefing, I walked outside. Waiting near the entrance was my father. I stopped. How did you get here? He held up the letter. Your mother wrote another instruction. I frowned. What? He looked at me. She said if I ever learned the truth, I needed to be there when the world finally thanked my daughter. I couldn't speak. For years, I had imagined my father seeing my achievements. I imagined him being proud, but I never imagined this. A quiet man standing outside the Pentagon, holding a letter from the woman who had always understood us both. He stepped closer. I owe you an apology. I looked away. Not yet. He nodded. I know. That answer surprised me. I don't deserve forgiveness because I finally learned the truth. His voice shook. I deserve the chance to understand the years I missed. For the first time, my father wasn't asking me to make his feelings easier. He was asking to carry some of mine. Then, the doors behind us opened. Colonel Hayes stepped outside. Sarah. I turned. Yes, sir. The ceremony begins in an hour. I looked confused. What ceremony? He glanced at my father, then back at me. The one honoring the soldiers who survived, and the officer who refused to leave them behind. My father looked at me, and for the first time in 30 years, he didn't look at me like someone who had left. He looked at me like someone who had returned.
The room was filled before I arrived, not with cameras, not with politicians, not with people searching for a headline, with families, the families of the soldiers from Operation Lantern. That was the part nobody understood. Everyone thought this day was about me. It wasn't. It was about the people who had spent 12 years wondering if the world had forgotten their sons, their daughters, their husbands, and their wives. I stood outside the ceremony hall with my father beside me. Neither of us spoke. For once, silence didn't feel like distance. It felt like two people finally accepting that words couldn't repair everything. They had to be earned. A young woman walked past us holding a framed photograph. I recognized the face immediately. Sergeant Daniel Reeves, one of the soldiers from my team. His sister stopped when she saw me. For a moment, she just stared. Then tears filled her eyes. You're Sarah Bennett. I nodded. Yes. She looked at the uniform, then at my face. You were there. It wasn't a question. I swallowed. Yes. Her hands tightened around the photograph. My brother always said there was someone who refused to leave them. I looked down. I made a promise. She shook her head. No. Her voice cracked. You kept one. Then she hugged me. And after 12 years, I finally allowed myself to feel the weight I had carried. Not the mission, not the danger, the people, the faces, the names, the ones who never got to walk away. Inside the hall, Colonel Hayes stepped onto the stage. Behind him was a large screen. The words appeared. Operation Lantern, Final Report. A quiet murmur moved through the room. Many people were seeing the name for the first time. Hayes looked across the audience. For years, these events remained classified, not because the actions were unimportant, but because the circumstances required silence. He paused. Today, that silence ends. The first photograph appeared. My team. 6 soldiers, 1 officer, 1 mission. The room became completely still. Hayes began explaining what happened that night. Not every detail. Some things would always remain private, but enough. Enough for families to understand, enough for history to remember. Then my name appeared. I felt every eye turn toward me. The old instinct returned. Stay calm, stay focused, don't show emotion. But this wasn't a battlefield. This wasn't a briefing. This was the moment I had spent years avoiding. Recognition. Hayes read the official statement. Colonel Sarah Bennett demonstrated exceptional leadership under extreme conditions. She made decisions that protected the lives of her team. She displayed courage beyond expectation. The words sounded strange because I wasn't remembering the success. I was remembering the fear, the uncertainty, the moment when I had no idea if anyone would survive. Then Hayes said something I wasn't prepared for. But her greatest act was not saving those soldiers. The room became silent. It was accepting that nobody might ever know she did. I looked down, because that was the truth. I never wanted the medal. I never wanted applause. I wanted the soldiers to come home. That was all. Inside the ceremony, Colonel Hayes gathered around. Families thanked me. Officers shook my hand. Former teammates shared memories. But the person I kept looking for was my father. He stood near the back of the room, watching, not trying to enter the conversation, not trying to make himself important, just watching. That alone told me something had changed. The old Thomas Bennett would have found a way to tell everyone he was my father. The man standing there now seemed to understand that this moment belonged to someone else. Eventually, he walked toward me. I saw the whole thing. I nodded. I know. He looked around the room. All those people, those families, those soldiers. His voice became quieter. You carried all of that. I looked away. For a long time. He shook his head. I spent years thinking you were running away from us. A pause. But you were running towards something. I didn't answer, because I didn't know what to say. He looked at me. I was angry because I thought I lost my daughter. His eyes filled. But the truth is, I never took the time to know the woman she became. That was the first apology that mattered. Not because it fixed everything, because it finally understood something. Later that evening, my father and I sat outside the building. No ceremony, no audience, no uniforms being admired. Just us, two people trying to rebuild something old. I have a question. I looked at him. Okay. Why didn't you tell me about the award? I smiled sadly, because I knew what you would ask. What? Why I kept it secret. He looked down. And why did you? I thought about it. Because every time I tried to explain my life, you heard that I was choosing something over you. He closed his eyes. That hurts because it was true. I did. I know. Another long silence. Then he said, I can't change the past. No, but I can stop pretending I understand things I don't. I looked at him. That was a very different sentence from the father I grew up with. He continued, I want to know your story, not the headlines, not the awards, your story. For years, that was all I had wanted. Not praise, not admiration, just curiosity. A father who wanted to know his daughter. I nodded. Okay. A small smile appeared on his face. Okay? Okay. And for the first time in decades, we sat together without trying to win an argument, without defending ourselves, without pretending, just a father and daughter, finally meeting each other again. But neither of us knew that the hardest part of the truth was still waiting, because Operation Lantern had one final secret, and when it came out, it would change not only how my father saw me, but how I saw myself. For 12 years, I believed the hardest part of Operation Lantern was surviving it. I was wrong. The hardest part was living afterward, because surviving a battlefield is simple compared to surviving the memories that follow you home. A battlefield has enemies you can see. Memories don't. They appear when the room is quiet. They return when you least expect them. and sometimes they come back wearing the face of someone you love. 3 days after the ceremony, Colonel Hayes called me again. I knew immediately something was wrong. The ceremony was finished, the files had been released, the families finally had answers. There should have been nothing left. But when I answered, I heard hesitation in his voice. "Sarah, what's wrong?" "We found something else." My stomach tightened. "What?" "An additional file." I looked toward the window. "About Operation Lantern?" "Yes." I waited. "About you?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. "Colonel, I thought everything had been reviewed." "So did we. Then what is this?" A pause. Then he said, "Your original mission report was altered." My heart stopped. "Altered how?" "The official version says you made a tactical decision after communication failure." "That's correct." "No." His voice became quieter. "It's incomplete." I drove back to Washington the next morning. The same building, the same security checks, the same long hallways. But this time, I felt different because I wasn't afraid of people discovering what I had done. I was afraid they would discover what I had hidden. Hayes placed a new folder in front of me. This was found in archived material. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note, my handwriting, but I didn't remember writing it. I read the first line. "If something happens to me, tell them the truth." I looked up. "I wrote this?" Hayes nodded. "Before the mission." I continued reading. The note wasn't about the operation. It wasn't about the enemy. It was about my team, and one soldier in particular, Lieutenant Michael Carter, the youngest member of our unit, the one who had only been deployed 6 months earlier, the one that everyone thought was lost that night. Except, he wasn't. I closed the folder. "He's alive." Hayes didn't answer. He didn't need to. I already knew. "What happened?" Hayes looked me carefully. After the evacuation, he was transferred under a different identity. "Why?" "Because he uncovered something during the mission." My hands tightened. "What?" Hayes lowered his voice. "He discovered that the failure wasn't an accident." The room became silent. Operation Lantern was supposed to fail. The communication blackout, the delayed extraction, the missing intelligence, all of it. Someone had made decisions that put my team in danger, and someone had spent 12 years making sure nobody asked why. I returned home that evening carrying another secret. My father immediately knew something was wrong. "You look like you did before." I stopped. "What?" "Before you left for that mission." I looked at him. "You remember?" He nodded. "I remember more than you think." That sentence surprised me, because for years I thought he remembered nothing. "I saw you that night." "What night?" "The night before you deployed." I sat down. "You never said anything?" "I know." "Why?" "Because I was angry." A pause. "You were leaving again." I looked away. "And I thought being angry would make you stay." The honesty hurt, because it was so human, so flawed. "So you pushed me away?" "Yes." For the first time, my father wasn't defending his choices. He was admitting them. That night, I finally told him something I had never told anyone. I almost didn't come home. His face changed. "What?" "During the mission." I stared at the floor. There was a moment when I thought that was it. He didn't interrupt. "I thought about you." His eyes filled. "Me?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I was angry." That surprised him. I was angry because the last thing I remembered was you telling me I was wasting my life. He looked down. "I didn't know." "I know." And I took a breath. And then I realized something. "What?" "I wasn't fighting to prove you wrong." I looked at him. "I was fighting because there were people counting on me." Silence. Then my father whispered, I wish I understood that sooner. A week later, Lieutenant Michael Carter returned, not as a hero, not as a headline, just a man carrying 12 years of silence. When he saw me, he smiled. Still refusing attention? I laughed. Still making jokes at inappropriate times? Someone has to. For the first time in years, I laughed about Operation Lantern. Not because it didn't hurt, because it finally belonged to the past. Before leaving, Michael looked at my father. "Sir." My father looked confused. "You know who I am?" Michael smiled. "Everyone on that mission knew about you." "Me?" "Yes." He looked at me. "Your daughter talked about you all the time." I froze. Michael continued. "When things got difficult, she didn't talk about awards. She didn't talk about promotions. She talked about getting home." My father's eyes filled. "She talked about us?" Michael nodded. "Every single day." That was the truth my father had never known. The daughter he believed had forgotten his family had carried them with her through everything. A month later, I returned to my hometown. No ceremony, no cameras, no generals, just a quiet Sunday morning. My father was waiting outside the house. He handed me a small box. "What is this?" "Something I should have given you years ago." Inside was an old photograph. Me, age 19, standing in uniform before my first deployment. On the back were words written by my father. "My daughter, my greatest courage." I looked at him. "You wrote this?" He nodded. I was proud. "Then why didn't you tell me?" He smiled sadly. "Because sometimes people are better at feeling love than showing it." That was the most honest thing he had ever said. I kept the photograph, not because it erased the years we lost. It didn't. Some wounds don't disappear. They become reminders. Reminders of what matters. A year later, I retired from active service. People asked if I missed the uniform, the missions, the recognition. My answer was always the same. I miss the people. Because in the end, that was never what military service was about. Not medals, not titles, not applause. People. The ones you protect. The ones who stand beside you. The ones who wait for you to come home. And sometimes, the greatest victory isn't when the world finally sees you. It's when the person who mattered most finally does. My father spent 30 years looking for the daughter he thought he lost. But the truth was, I had been there all along. He just had to learn how to see me.